Ancestry.com just posted a video about Fred Armisen, the comedian of Portlandia fame, finds out he is actually Korean. Yeah. The long history of Korea and how it's understood by the world today. And Fred Armisen thought he was Japanese because he was told that he had a Japanese grandfather. And in the Ancestry.com video, they talk about how 6,000 Koreans were massacred in Japan. It really skips over the long and convoluted history that led to these circumstances. Why is Korea divided today? Why is Fred Armisen in that fucking video ignorant to his own ethnic heritage? And why is it important for us to know these things? So we think about the great world powers that exist today: the United States, the USSR, the remnants of the USSR, Russia, and China. Korea has a long history of pushing and pulling with greater powers. If we look back hundreds and hundreds of years ago, it has been pushing and pulling between the island of Japan and the mainland of China for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. In the 1900s, Korea was colonized by Japan. It was forcibly annexed from 1905, I believe. You can Google the exact date, 1905 or 1910 maybe, until the end of World War II, 1945. And now, what was once a training ground for Chinese forces that turned into a Japanese military base during the colonization period is now a United States Army base in South Korea. Whereas North Korea was backed by the USSR after World War II, and then Korea became really, we call it a battling of political ideologies, democracy, freedom, and righteousness versus the red communist forces of the USSR and China. Capitalism versus communism. Yeah, fucking right. There's no fucking such thing as pure capitalism or communism, especially not in fucking America, which is actually a plutocracy. It's a business of fucking lobbyists and corporations really just propping up the Anglo-Saxon royal oligarchical class that colonized the entire fucking world through mercantile trading, which was commodifying people, commodifying anything. And that's what we see in the world today. Why is Korea divided? Because Anglo-Saxons pushed for power in the Asian region, destabilized China with the Opium Wars, pushed for Japanese expansionism during the Meiji era, which allowed them to grow in power, and then they got out of hand and teamed up with the Axis forces. And then Korea became the first place in modern history to be a proxy state for larger global powers to fight each other without actually fighting each other. And now we see the same pattern repeated over and over and over in the Congo, in Israel, in South America, all parts of South America, everywhere in the world, you see it repeated over and over again. And now China has also grown in power, so it's not just the USA and the USSR. And we're still doing it. We're still doing this nonsense where we are all just people, yet we carry passports around and wear our nationalities, and we divide up lands just like fucking wolf packs or apes, pissing on trees to mark our territory. There's nothing different. It's all the same. So looking at Fred Armisen, I find it so sad that he is obviously so terribly ignorant of his ethnic heritage. And Ancestry.com, yeah, I mean, it looks like they touched a little bit on things, but generally speaking, growing up in America, and how a lot of Americans talk like they know so much about Korea, because now Korea has exploded in popularity in the last less than 10 years, with with K-pop and K-dramas that was never pushed by Western culture. It was through the internet and kids being opened up to anime, being exposed to Japanese culture, and through that they were exposed with YouTube, K-pop videos. Younger people really found these things themselves and exposed larger mainstream culture to it. But when I was a kid, no one knew anything about Korea. When I was a kid, people would say, "Are you Chinese or Japanese?" And when I would say, "I'm half Korean," they would say, "What's that?" And then when I was a teenager, they would say North or South Korea, which is ridiculous if you know anything about history, because North Koreans are essentially trapped in their country. And if they can go places, it sure is not to fucking Western countries. So why is it important? In simply a modern political sense, it's important to know the machinations of geopolitics. It's important to know these things because you have to understand the way the world works and how we can change it to be better for people. Why are the things happening in Gaza? Why are people being killed? How do we solve these problems? How do we solve these problems of people being used as fucking war fodder for oligarchical business classist elite? I hate that word. There's nothing elite about barbaric wealthy people who have historically held power. You know how those motherfuckers got power? Way back when we were ooga booga cavemen, they selfishly grabbed all the food and said, "Bro, this is my food. You can't have any of my food, even though you're the one who got it. And because I'm bigger than you, I'm going to beat you up if you get my food." And then people just got used to it, and it's like, "Hey, don't mess with Ooga Booga over there because he's crazy. And we're just going to let him be crazy." And then that crazy motherfucker had a bunch of kids, and all of them just got entitled to having more than anyone else. And this expanded into fucking Elon Musk ass motherfuckers in their apartheid, whatever, emerald mines, and Bill Gates ass motherfuckers fucking leveraging business in tech companies, and it's everywhere. The Carnegies, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the fucking kings and queens everywhere in the world. It's all fucking bullshit to create this idea of inherent class division and hierarchy. And when you understand that in an individual sense, no individual has any inherent worth more than another. We are all human. We are all equal on this planet. And we're balancing freedoms and happinesses between people, that to create a more optimal way of living for every single individual means balancing individual freedoms and rights, in the sense that everyone can have the optimal level of mobility and the ability to walk around unharassed and free from danger, free from harm, with equitable opportunities to pursue the things that contribute to society as well as fulfill them on a personal level. But instead of trying to figure out how to do those things, what do we have? We have hyper-capitalism happening everywhere. For what? For the few. We call them the 1%. It's really more like the 0.001%. No single individual. I don't care if you created the internet or cured cancer. No single individual is worth 1,000 times more than another. But that's the amount of power that the wealthy class have. And I say wealthy, it's really the class in power, the people in power that leverage their power over other people to carve up whole nations, to mobilize entire armies to do what? To subjugate people, to create these lies of nationalism, of race, of religion, these lies of dividing people along imaginary lines. That's all it is, imaginary lines, because once you divide people, you can categorize them. You can categorize them and use them to dominate them, to make them do what you want them to do. And that's why people in power love to create division between the sexes, between religion, between any concept you can think of. Like the Rick and Morty nipple war thing, race war with the shape of their nipples. It's arbitrary, it's contrived, and it's there simply for dominance and subjugation, to create a master and a slave. So, yeah, that's why I'm talking about this video I just saw about Fred Armisen. I would hope that Fred Armisen educates himself about the history of Korea and why it's the way it is, and why I believe people should know about the history of my ethnic heritage, because it's really such a big part of modern geopolitical structuring of today. And we still see, like, the largest overseas U.S. military base in the world right now is in South Korea for a reason, because it's all about territorial push and pull between other powers. We're seeing heightening tensions between the USA, Russia, and China once more. We see Jon Stewart talking about the new Cold War is happening. The Cold War never really ended. And what is the Cold War really? It's just fucking posturing with really the most terrifying weapons ever created. Weapons that can literally wipe out all life on Earth. Weapons that can burn the atmosphere and usher in a new mass global extinction, can reshape the environment permanently. Mass extinctions have happened throughout Earth's history, like 6 times or something like that. And to my knowledge, no living organism has ever held the power to consciously cause it to happen, but that's where we're at now. So this is why it's incredibly important for every individual to think about these things, to do their utmost to educate others, to say, like, look, the way we're living is insane. It's insane. We're all just people, humans, living on Earth, living on this planet. And we can talk about the meaning of life, the sanctity or the lack of in humanity, like all this philosophical bullshit. But when it comes down to it, like, we are subjective living things that feel and want happiness. And happiness on a basic level is survival. Is survival that is relatively free from harm, right? And that's something that is achievable for everyone if we simply wake up to the fact we're all human, every single one of us, on an inherent equal level, here sharing a very short moment in time on a very small planet in a incomprehensibly vast cosmos. So, things to think about.